Please be seated. So, once again, it is a joy for us to come together for the second time only in this month to celebrate the extraordinary rite of the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. We have always been telling people that this is not to replace or to restore. It is something that we celebrate simultaneously with the more familiar form of the Mass, otherwise known to us now as the ordinary rite. That way we can continue to enhance the beauty and the richness of the liturgy, because after all, the Church has existed for thousands of years, and the ways of praying have always been something significant to the people of God, because it is that which connects them directly to God. And for this reason, we do what we can to contribute to continue to provide the beautiful celebration of the liturgy, and in this case for us to start anew, celebrating the old rite as it is commonly referred now, or the extraordinary rite of the Latin Mass. Having said that, today we are privileged also to celebrate this important solemnity in honor of the body and blood of Christ, otherwise known as the Sunday of Corpus Christi. My understanding is it is joining together of two separate celebrations before, prior to the reforms of the liturgy after 1962 or 1965, where we had a separate celebration in honor of the body of Christ and a separate celebration in honor of the blood of Christ. And in recent times, we have adopted as part of the new calendar of the liturgy as a joint feast. After all, it celebrates the same and one, or as the Catechism of the Church would call it, it celebrates the presence of the whole Christ, body and soul, divinity, human and divine, blood and body. Having said that, I would like to call our attention to an American astronaut who goes by the name Mike Hopkins. I doubt it if we even have heard about his name before, but he became quite famous in 2013 because he was one of the chosen few to join a simultaneous mission to space together with the counterpart of the American astronauts, the Russian cosmonauts, on a joint mission to space. And the thing about Mike is that a year before he was sent on a mission to space, he converted to Catholicism. And one of the reasons that made him want to become a Catholic was the experience of the Mass, the Holy Eucharist. He loved it so much, and he was a frequent receiver. He was a frequent receiver of the sacrament and would participate at Mass on Sundays. And when he knew about his going to be in space for at least 6 months, that kind of gave him a problem, because he knew that for the next 6 months, receiving the communion would not be possible, or participating at Mass for that reason, for that same reason. And luckily, a solution was found. A benevolent bishop allowed him to carry in his person 6 months' worth of Holy Communion, pre-consecrated and placed in a special container. And each Sunday, while he was in space, he would pray and then receive communion. And on 3 other occasions, he did it outside of the Sunday time. He did it when he was made to walk twice into space, and the third one was on his final return back to the atmosphere of the Earth, just before entering into the atmosphere. When he saw the planet Earth before him in all its beauty, he received one final communion in space just before his re-entry. So this is one Catholic guy who raised the level of the devotion to the Eucharist to the level of space, the final frontier, so to speak, of the Eucharist. We speak of Mike Hopkins because his experience and devotion to the Eucharist dramatizes for us the theme of the meaning of the celebration of Corpus Christi Sunday for us for this year, year A. You know that the liturgy of the Church goes through a 3-year cycle, at least for the new calendar, and we celebrate it every year, the same feast, but there are variations on the theme. So year A, which is this year, celebrates the Eucharist as body and as food and drink for the journey. Year B celebrates the Eucharist as signs of the new covenant that God entered into with His own new chosen people, the baptized members of the Church. And year C, which is the third year of the cycle, celebrates the priesthood of Jesus, who offers himself whole and entire in the sacrament of the Eucharist. So this year, we are invited to think of the Eucharist simply as food and drink for us in life. It is interesting to note that in the old rite, prior to 1962, there was not a special preface or preface serving as an introduction to the consecration prayer before Mass or within Mass with the theme of the Eucharist. It is only found at a later period in our time, when in the new Missa we have many special preface to highlight certain festivities. But in the old Missa, where the preface was quite a handful only, the suggested preface for today's Mass is now taken from the common, the one that is used where there are no other preface available, but it was taken from the feast of the birthday of Jesus Christ, or Christmas. The reason being, according to those who have studied the liturgy, is because to remind people that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And Bethlehem would literally mean the house of bread. So Jesus came to be born in order to become food for us, and that could not be more true than when we receive him in Holy Communion at the celebration of the Mass. So Jesus is presented us as food. Also, in the tradition of Christian symbolism, we remember the time when there was a great persecution brought about by the Roman emperors on the early Christians. Christians secretly professed the faith so that they would recognize a brother or a sister in the faith with the symbol of the fish. The symbol of the fish, why? Because in Greek, the Greek word for fish is, as we know, is iktos. The letters of if you spell it in Greek, each letter becomes an acronym for the simplest form of confession adopted by the early Christians. The confession that simply reads, Jesus is the Son of God, which is our version today of the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed, which is a lot longer than the simple statement that Jesus is the Son of God. And that is brought about by the simple drawing of a fish. But there was another purpose why the symbol became quite important. Because we remember the time that in the Gospels, first of all in the Gospels, when Jesus prefigured, prepared the people for the miracle of the institution of the Eucharist with the multiplication of loaves that was given to the multitude that was hungry on account of their following Christ in his preaching. Jesus also served fish side by side bread. The fish was present. Also, in the post-resurrection experience of the apostles, when Jesus met them at the shore to provide them bread again, which is again reminiscent of the Eucharistic meal that he has prepared on the eve of his passion, there was fish again offered for breakfast. So much so, therefore, that one pious bishop from Asia Minor, who goes by the name Albertius of Hierapolis, on his deathbed, he summed up his life by saying that he has been privileged to have traveled around the world from Europe all the way to the African continent, probably Egypt and some parts of Africa and Rome. And he said, in all these places, which to his mind constituted the entire globe at the time, limited as the space may have been that he actually traveled, but for him it was the world as it is. He said, people around the world are fed and nourished by the same faith and by the same food. The fish that is drawn out from the sacrament, from the baptismal font, which originally comes from the womb of the Virgin Mary, with reference to Jesus as the Son of God and Son of Mary and our Eucharistic bread. So there is so much insistence in Christian symbolism and Christian prayer and liturgy on the idea of Jesus as our food. And in today's Gospel reading, as we have read it in the English version, Jesus himself said, my body is real food, my blood is real drink. Why this insistence? In the earlier part of the scriptures from the Old Testament, we remember the story of how a group of oppressed people left the land of slavery, which was Egypt, in order to find the land promised by God to them as the land of freedom, as the land flowing with milk and honey, as the land of promise. It was a 40-year journey across the desert, with many of those who made the initial trip not having survived to see the end, where the end of the journey would take them. And in these 40 years of wandering, when people lost hope of ever finding happiness, of ever getting to fulfill their life dreams, of beginning to feel the tiredness of the journey, the difficulties of living with other people in close proximity, of the anxiety of the tomorrows that have yet to come, God rained down manna from heaven as food to console them. Here we understand that in the Eucharist, we experience the same as of the old Israelites, the time of the Old Testament. We are a people on a journey. We are a very anxious people. We have so many burdens of our own that our even closest friends are not aware of. We are, in the words of a famous American poet, people who live our lives in quiet desperation. Worry and anxiety are our daily bread. And Jesus wants to replace that with the bread of hope, with the bread of joy, with the bread of promise, with the bread of life, with the bread come down from heaven. This is the Eucharist. To replace bread, which, if you know, in European languages, bread is pan or pain or pani, which is literally what the English counterpart suggests, pain. It is eaten by the sweat, under the sweat of our brow, and after hard, long work of toil, with us sweating blood and tears to procure our little bread for our survival. This painful food, this food of pain, is now replaced by the Eucharist with this food of joy. And why is it a food of joy for us? Because we are given no less than not a simple food, but we are given a person to feast on, a presence, a real presence to feast on, which is Jesus Christ himself. Jesus offers himself as our companion for life, so that we will never have to go through our worries alone. Jesus accompanies us in our journey through life, so that we will have somebody to forgive us when we fail and where we fail the most. There's a Jesus to walk with us so that we will never be in despair of our tomorrows or of the beautiful life that awaits us in the future. But more importantly also, we are told that this bread is given to us not just for this life, but to provide us with a life that will be ours when we take leave of this world. The more we eat of this bread, the better prepared are we to live forever with God. The less we partake of this bread, the less ready are we to live forever with God in heaven. And for this reason today, we simply rejoice that our bread of pain has been replaced with this bread of joy, Jesus, our Eucharistic Lord.